Legends. What's going on? Hope all is well. I hope you all are rocking, having an incredible week. I hope you all are staying safe out there. Welcome back to another Excelsius live demo. I'm super excited to be getting into today's live demo. We're going to be picking up on the theme that was talked about a little bit earlier today. For those that do not know, we do run New York live sessions, 8 a.m. Eastern. You can find us there every day, Monday through Friday. And so we're going to be picking up a little bit with regards to what we were talking about on the live stream this morning. We were talking about mainly the crypto and index space, really talking about how volatility ultimately creates opportunity, and that is going to be the big theme for today. Really looking at different trade possibilities, utilizing Excelsius, how we can really see different opportunities with Excelsius, and really looking at the different advantages that Excelsius provides. For those that are not already hooked up with Excelsius, go and get set up at www.pinksand.co/Excelsius. Excelsius is the #1 trading algorithm in the world. It is designed by traders for traders to really take your trading to a whole new level. And so definitely go ahead and experience the advantage. You can always reach out to support at any time, and they'll be there to help out. And so let's jump into today's session. As we said before, we're going to mainly talk about the market in context to the indexes and the crypto space. We primarily want to focus on those two environments just because that is where the majority of the volume is currently sitting. Now, we're going to be starting from the higher timeframes and really start taking a look down to the smaller timeframes. This is a big theme that you should really continue to keep in mind as time goes on. Volatility does ultimately create opportunity. And so when it comes down to assessing, especially here we are Monday, in the beginning of the week, trying to figure out, hey, what trade should I be firing away at? Where should I really be looking at in context to the market? That is really where ultimately, you really want to take a look at where the majority of the, movement is taking place. Over the last two or three trading sessions now, we've definitely seen that the indexes and the cryptos are the ones that are moving more aggressively here. Definitely seeing such extensive drops. Those are the types of environments that you want to see because the pullbacks, the continued movements, they're going to be nice. They're going to have some really good momentum associated to it. And that momentum is something that is definitely worth trading. Now, on top of that, we do also have our Discord server here. It is an incredible place, once again, solely for the fact that it is telling you everything that is going on from the marketplace, giving you a wide variety of options to choose from, but really being those second pair of eyes and ears when it does come down to everything pertaining to your trading. And so super unique tool, definitely to have in addition to Excelsius there. Once again, you can definitely see that the cryptos are the pairs that are popping off a lot more in these last couple of trading days, the indexes as well. And you can just see that from the sheer amount of trades that are here. And so now, this is something that we've been talking about a lot, especially for the last couple of days now, talking about BTC in and of itself, talking about the crypto space in its entirety, what is going on here from a development standpoint. And we're simply just seeing a further continued direction of this descending pressure here. Now, we want to be mindful once again that this descending pressure is acting extremely cyclical to the stance that it's been in since about the end of November into December, but also that it is very short term. What we mean by the cyclical nature of it is that you will see these hard pushes. Let's take off the market structure candles here for just a second here. You will see these hard pushes followed by these short-term corrections and then continued movements. And that is really what you're seeing across the board. And so ultimately right now, one could argue that we're very much in a similar environment such as this. And Excelsius will very much tell us that as well. Until we get above a serious, significant region, you're not going to expect any type of shift on that side. Super unique tool that we do have here is the market structure candles, ultimately telling you what the direction of the market is. And so really unique on that side because we know that everything that we should be moving in, especially when it comes down to crypto side, should be short term, definitely from the buyers, right? Because the market has been down now for the last 3 or 4 months. And so when we're taking a look though at this current moment, right? And this is something that we did talk about on the last I believe the last live demo that we ran as well, Excelsius is at a super sensitive region in context to where it is. This is why it's giving the indications. And I'm sure if we put on the rejection zones here, that we are starting to decelerate, we are starting to exhaust, and we can very much see that concept is true. Now, what the environment is ultimately showing us is that while we are decelerating and while we are exhausting, that doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that we're still very much for the moment, expecting another continued drop. And so we are expecting that. I think the bigger question for the moment becomes, where could we expect that? For the moment, we can see that price, and we're going to drop down into the intraday time frame in just a second here. Price is definitely looking to continue to that 40K handle and maybe a little bit higher for the short term, but there is no real structural change until we start getting above this 45K region. Excelsius, and especially times like these, is so beneficial to you because it's keeping you in line with market's direction, one, but more importantly, it's really giving you those opportunities, those areas that you can be mindful of in context to where you can expect price to start decelerating, start exhausting, just more importantly, potentially continuing in the other direction. So just taking a look at some Excelsius-based functionalities here. Ultimately, we know that we're decelerating. Price is attempting to pull back, but nonetheless, the biggest thing that we want to be mindful of is ultimately short-term changes that are taking place and really seeing what type of opportunities that we can benefit from. Dropping to the 4 here, we can definitely see in the short term that price is attempting to shift out. However, be mindful of what I just said, which is the fact that it is short term. And so because of that, ultimately, we want to be mindful and use Excelsius's tools to be aware of that, right? In the event that we can start breaking out, we'll definitely start expecting some type of continuation, but be mindful as we start to drop into time frame here, you'll start to see that we'll start moving into more of a sensitive region, of course, pushing into, the sensitive areas for that given trading session. Super cool and unique feature, something we were talking about heavily on the live stream earlier this morning, which was the adaptability that Excelsius has. Ultimately, you might see in something like this that we may have a potential free running movement on, the 4-hour time frame, but that's not necessarily going to say that price is just going to move that effortlessly, right, as quickly as maybe the chart might indicate. And that is something that tends to becomes a huge problem for a lot of traders, is not just necessarily getting involved in trades, which tends to potentially sometimes be the easier part of the two, but it's really a matter of managing not just the trade itself, but managing your expectations when it does come down to the trade. Incredible tools with Excelsius, right? Ultimately giving you those indications of where you can expect slowdowns, especially in certain trading sessions that you might be in, right? And so that is something that we're also going to take a look at as we drop down. But going back into the entire atmosphere from the crypto side of things, everything is short term right now, but still super, super opportunistic, solely for the fact that volatility is here. And so even though we are pulling back right now, though, you can definitely see just from, yesterday evening, prices dropping 5-6%, and now ultimately pulling back now to 38, 39K. Right? Those are opportunities that you do potentially, want to take advantage of course, if it fits within your trading plan. Now, taking a look at BTC, even in a smaller stance here, we can definitely see that Excelsius is providing us some additional plays, but I'll be the first one to tell you that everything will be short-term across the board. Once again, you can definitely see here in a super unique example on the higher time frame, such as the 4-hour here, we can see that we're nowhere near, right, this rejection zone. But at the same time, one might also indicate, hey, we should just continue up. There is really nothing in this way to stop it, but that's not necessarily true. You can see that we have been through some previous lows within here that definitely did hold a tremendous amount of sensitivity. This is definitely going to be reflected as the buyers start to push into this region. You want also the tools to be reflective of that. Excelsius very much does that as well, right? You drop into the 1 hour and notice now how we're nearing a rejection zone on that 1 hour time frame, giving you indications that, hey, you know what, we're going to be pushing into the Asian session within here. We can definitely start to expect potentially some slowdown within these buyers, maybe one last push as we are starting to correct out, but nonetheless, nothing too major. You start to change your mindset. You start to change your overall sentiment on the play as structure continues to start breaking down the higher time frames, right? So in this case, let's say you understand that from more of an intraday status, as you start to break down these higher time frame levels, you can start to change your mindset and maybe start to expect some more grander moves. This is the exciting part, especially when it comes down to Excelsius, because of the applications, because of the amount of possibilities that you do have as the trader, as the investor, as the overall market participant. The ability to completely mix and match, and more importantly, just customize at free will, is the reason why we designed Excelsius in the way that it is, and more importantly, why it's here in the way that it is. It's meant to not only give confidence to your current and existing trading, but to really take your trading to new levels by, and a fundamental part of that is being incredibly hyper aware. What to be hyper aware of, though, is the main points, and that's really where Excelsius comes into play, telling you exactly what's happening in that given time frame, in that given trading session in which you're trading within. And so definitely when we are looking for, at the crypto market in its entirety, definitely having plays across the board, but we're going to be mindful they are short term, but still extremely lucrative and opportunistic nonetheless. Sells for the moment, though, are not really something that we're interested in for a couple of reasons. Not to just say that, hey, you're pushing into some really key and sensitive points here, and that goes back to, where we're currently sitting at from the dailies aspect. But when you do start to drop down onto the weekly, you can see as well that we are at some serious regions here. Super cool, unique feature with Excelsius here, and you can just see on this, there's did everything get taken off? Oops, just want to mark structure on. There hasn't been any major structural break within this bullish development right now, ultimately just going back to telling you, how the market is currently behaving, and everything is very much of a correction to the entire bullish movement that we've been receiving now for the last 18 months. However, it doesn't change the status of what is currently going on within here, and that's really where the mindfulness starts coming into play. It's really where Excelsius's tools really start to play a huge role. And so what we can see, though, across the board is that we're definitely pushing into a sensitive region, can give indications of why we're going to expect some type of pullback, and we'll see what will happen on the BTC side of things. But nonetheless, this is very much cross-correlated with the index side. That's something that we were talking about earlier today. We'll take a look more from the Dow standpoint, just because that tends to run the show. And this is something as well that's really interesting. Are we going to start correcting and really trying to pull back, potentially warrant all of this bearish pressure as irrelevant? Are we going to start breaking the highs and warranting new highs? It's tough to say right now. I think across the board, a lot of individuals, right, they're very mindful of the actions that were taken post-COVID. And I think that in and of itself, is pending in context to reflection. But nonetheless, we trade what we see, not what we think. And so we ultimately use our analysis, use our tools, and we dictate our actions from there. With Excelsius is showing us straight up that, while we are descending in the intraday status, from a weekly standpoint, we're still very much in a bullish environment. Nothing significant has broken yet, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is very, very extended. You pop on those rejection zones there, especially on the daily and the weekly, you can see that we're pushing into some serious handles. You saw last time we ultimately push into these regions, you look how quickly price reverses off. And so it's not to say, though, once again, that we're necessarily going to have such grand movements. It all comes down to the structure and the ultimate sentiment that's going on within the market, but giving us indication of potential slowdowns. Aside from just the areas that we're in, we want to be mindful of the levels that are holding and what comes with these levels. These levels represent sentiment. They represent overall feel and potential actions and future actions that can and are going to take place. And this in and of itself is something huge, right? That's what market structure is all about, giving you the complete overview in context to market development across the board without any bias associated to it, simply just telling you based on the development that's there. And in something like this, we can very much see that the bias remains for the moment. It does not take away from the fact that the market in and of itself is decelerated. It's exhausted, but nothing major has broken down. However, if you drop into more of an intraday status, one will argue a little bit differently that we did break some significant points, but we did just recently attempt to continue after those breaks and nothing major has happened. Follow Excelsius's move since. We come back come back below these previous highs, back into the base now of this range that has been sitting here now for a minute. And what we can see here ultimately is that price immediately reverts back down to a serious sensitive point. In the moment we broke, we simply resulted in furthering this false movement, this failed attempt of pressure. Now, Once we saw price attempt to pull back, we saw a further continued movement, but we can see not just the rejection zone holding up extremely well, but take a look at these key levels here from Excelsius, showing a tremendous amount of respect for price and giving us further indication that with time, if this is unable to break, we may ultimately result in a pullback into these previous regions. This is really where we can expect price to start pushing into. We take a look at the institutional volume profile, it's ultimately going to give us a really good indication of where we can expect the volume, who's, and when you take a look at, the ultimate respect within price, you just see, how lovely price respects the moment we start pushing into these regions. If I draw a clear line from where the first largest bar is, and you kind of look at where the majority of that initial volume sits from the moment we broke this region, an immediate push down, it's absolutely fascinating. It's fascinating to see the level of respect that takes place. And this is something that I'll talk about time and time again, and we'll continue to talk about as time goes on. Technicals are more and more respected each day, solely for the fact that there's more volume being applied to technical trading. With more volume applied to technical trading, ultimately gives more validity and more probability to the trading that is taking place. And so aside from the fundamentals that create the catalysts that drive the volume from a monetary standpoint, the technicals are the ultimate reflection of sentiment that takes place. And so it's absolutely incredible when you have such an existing foundation and then you add on Excelsius and you really see the additional data that is providing you, hand in hand telling you when you can expect slowdowns, when you can expect shifts, when you can expect continuations, when you can expect range-bound environments. It truly is an advantage. It's unparalleled to anything else out there. Gives complete and unparalleled confidence to move in any way that you see fit. That's what's so exciting about this. And so when we get in times like these, where the last, 4, 5, 6 trading sessions have been just extreme volatility, this is really where Excelsius can take things to a whole new level, providing a tremendous amount of opportunity unlike anything else. Something like the US 30 here, right, which you have 3 reciprocal markets that you could take a look at. US 30, S&P, NAS. It's amazing. You drop down now into the smaller time frames, we start looking for those potential longs that could happen, also being mindful of the sells that can take place. And it's very, very simple. Excelsius guides the way. It's a matter of making sure that we're interested in potential game plans that are available based on the approach, the strategy in which we're looking to utilize. We can definitely see here that price is definitely extended, no question about that. Just recently, we did get a nice breakthrough, some points of market structure here. And so we're definitely going to be expecting this to move further up. Now, it's incredibly important to be mindful, and something that's going to be a big theme as we go on is being okay with the potential expectations that can come about potential plays. As we do know, the majority of the market is still bearish in this sense for the intraday aspect for the last couple of weeks. And because of that, we're not going to change our bias and say that we're completely shifting out of a major direction. When we do get potential intraday entries, we're not going to say that we should just be getting these straight movements, because that's not going to happen either. And so when you're trying to estimate these potential pullbacks, even though maybe the next week or 2 we may continue up, and you're trying to assess when price can start decelerating, start exhausting, start pulling back for a couple of candles, that's where Excelsius tools really do start taking things to a whole new level. Here on the 4-hour time frame, you just see that price just broke through a previous point of market structure, pulling off a previous rejection zone, got some pretty good confluences. But let's take things up a notch. Let's drop down to the smaller time frame. You're going to see Excelsius completely adapt, start giving some more key levels here into the past, and notice what we're automatically nearing to, a rejection zone. Now we can start to anticipate when we might start getting another pullback. when we may start to cause some deceleration or exhaustion in this correction in and of itself of this previous descending move. What we like to call here trading a trend within a trend. Being mindful of all the potential movements that can take place in each leg. While on the daily time frame, this whole movement here, they simply just look like this, has many legs of it inside. Absolutely astonishing when you take a look at the amount of data that's provided to you. And so now we know, just by getting through some of these key and sensitive points here, we can definitely start targeting some of these upper points, and that comes right in line with where this rejection zone sits. Look for this entire movement to develop in series of waves, being mindful of where these waves could take place. Being hyper aware that this movement can still happen at any time because of all the pressure that we've been receiving now for the last couple of weeks. This is what Excelsius is here for, to really open up and expand your overall bias as a trader, to expand your ability and your knowledge. It's the applicability on this is unlike anything out there. And I will continue to repeat that with time. And so when taking a look at such environments like this, it gives you the utmost excitement because you know that there's going to be such a tremendous amount of more opportunities, which mean such a chance to really increase one's P&L. Aside from just increasing and giving you the possibility to make trades, we want to always talk about, the ability to protect capital, the ability to make sure that we're still being mindful of this as trades are developing, as trades are still populating. And this is precisely what Excelsius is designed for as well. It's not going to give you over exaggerations of potential plays. It's not going to hinder your your sight. It's going to be very real with you. And it's not going to bend or fold. One prime tool that we can use right there is the market structure candles, keeping you directly in line with what's going on from a direction standpoint. What we can definitely see here is that in the intraday aspect, we are still very much, bearish. And just recently we switched into a bullish environment. We dropped down into the daily though. We are still bearish and will remain bearish until we start to break through some type of significant point of market structure. With this, Excelsius is telling you straightforward, if you're taking any type of these buys, they should be very much short term. Until you start correcting these highs and you start saying that all of this movement was false, all of this should be short term. This is the beauty about Excelsius. You get into a trade. Too many times traders have these false expectations, or what I like to call as the game creating a mirage. Because of the amount of time that we spend in the game, managing trades, thinking about the trades, this ultimately puts a tremendous amount on our overall stamina when it comes down to being tough about concepts and making sure that the ideas don't bend. Having a tool like this that's ultimately telling you what the direction is and whether the direction is attempting to change, which can ultimately come down to you being able to mitigate, adjust stops, protect capital, close positions. It's absolutely amazing. And so that's the super unique part, especially in times like these. We don't want to just be so hyper aware about opportunities and potential plays, but we also want to be hyper aware of the tools that we can utilize to also help protect these gains that we're going to be taking. Also looking for ways that we can still also maximize, those trades that you do get involved in. And so incredible on that side. When you do get times like these, too many times traders miss out because they have their fixed style of trading. And that fixed style of trading really doesn't result in a tremendous amount of trades, but tends to result in, 2 or 3 types of movements. And a lot of times the market, requires time for those setups to come out, to play out. But with Excelsius, you truly do get endless possibilities. When we take a look at some of the other markets that are very reflective of the Dow, right? S&P and NAS, all of them are very much going to look the same. Maybe the weekly structure will be a tad different, but the daily sentiment will be all the same. They're all moving in a very reciprocal manner. And that should be true as well, considering that the last 2 years, the world has taken a global stance on COVID-19. And so a lot of the actions that have come about, right, of course, have been, all for, the globe and more importantly, each market. And so it's not like we've really seen any structural change from any real market standpoint. However, one thing you will start to see dependent on, the pair that you are trading is that some of them do have different types of changes in here. We take a look at something like the S&P here, and we definitely can see that the S&P is trying to break down some short-term structure here, but, in the grander term, still not breaking anything significant. Unlike something like the US 30, where you had a little bit more of support on that side of things, right? The S&P here, we can definitely see that not necessarily as many critical levels, but still very much at a critical level compared to something like the US 30, where you're just seeing a tremendous amount of more levels start populating. And so on something like this, right, this just simply goes back down into just the reciprocalness and ultimately just giving you those additional opportunities when it does come down to plays in volatile times. Going back to the daily, though, ultimately we're very much similar to what US 30 looked like, and we'll take a look at NAS in just a second, but nonetheless, very much looking for the same. We can see here that Excelsius pulling off some serious key levels within here, definitely giving us indications of where that deceleration and exhaustion had sit. We take a look, we populate the rejection zones here. We'll take a look at the institutional volume. We're pulling off of some serious points here. We can very much see the same thing. The moment those bigger bars started coming into play, we can very much see the respect that had come about. You want to look at it from more of a grander standpoint. You can very much see price just pushing into a significant region, and you can just see how well price respected in context to Excelsius's tools, giving us indications of potential orders on top of the other elements that are taking place. And so, especially for those that do have Excelsius, and if you don't, you should be already getting plugged into Excelsius. The ability to mix and match possibilities is endless. Whether you're somebody who likes to use the institutional volume, whether you're someone who only likes to use the rejection zones, or you're someone who likes to use both of them. That is the sole reason on why Excelsius was designed in the way that it is, to ultimately give you that flexibility to customize as you please for what you need and would like for it to do for you. That is really the biggest thing when it comes down to Excelsius, and more so just the overall applicability with it. And so for me personally, I like mixing and matching the tools all based on the environments that we are in. In something like this, I'll definitely be adding the institutional volume profile a lot more than I normally would, just because of the volatility that is in here. I want to know where the majority of orders are going to be sitting in a longer term environment, but nonetheless, very much though, for me, I like mixing and matching the combination of tools just to give me different results based on types of trades that I'm trying to achieve. And so in something like this, after seeing such, incredible volume sitting in such, sensitive regions on top of the point of structure that we're sitting in, on top of, pushing into the first zone of the rejection zone, very much looking for these short-term corrections, but still being mindful that until we can start correcting out of the highs in the bigger picture, the bias does not change, right? And if you turn on Excelsius market structure candles in this way, you'd very much see that to be true as well. Color is going to remain until we break out of structure. Super unique, and more importantly, crazy helpful when going down into the smaller time frames, because in the event that I do ever get sucked into the time frame in which I'm trading within, I can ultimately turn on that setting and it's going to guide me accordingly. And so incredibly unique and adaptable nonetheless, especially in times like these where opportunities are incredibly lucrative. We want to be making sure that we are competing to the maximum that we can. Now, dropping into the smaller time frames here, very similar to US 30 in this case here. Nonetheless, though, we can expect some type of slowdown, and that's really the biggest thing that we're trying to be mindful of, is that we know that we can expect some type of, short-term correction, some type of short-term pullback. The question becomes, when are these potential short-term legs inside of this bigger term pullback going to take place? That's really where Excelsius comes into play. It's helping you be mindful of the potential areas through the use of the rejection zones, through the use of its key levels that it is marking up. We can see here right now that we're continuing to breaking through some previous points of market structure, furthering our concept that, hey, we can expect continued movements. However, we want to be mindful, is that going to happen in a straight way? Is price going to start pulling off of this previous low? Ultimately, where can we start expecting price to start having some of these short-term corrections? And that's where the adaptability is when it comes down to Excelsius and its tools. And so when we drop down into the smaller time frame, for example, like the 15, we'll definitely be pushing into more of a sensitive region on this case here. We can definitely see that price is now pushing into an upper rejection zone in this case here. And we can expect as price to start slowing down, potentially start shifting its direction in the short term. Now, what we can expect, though, once again, is a potential top being created on the intraday status, but just simply helping us plan for when we can start expecting this bullish momentum to start subsiding for the short term and potentially start expecting some continued movements after that. And so when we do take a look at it, it really just comes down to ultimately what the goal is and making sure that we're managing our expectations accordingly. But in times like these, where volatility is at an ultimate high, the amount of opportunities that we do receive is unparalleled to none. And so definitely with Excelsius here, we are getting a tremendous amount of more plays, and that's really what it's all about. But at the same time, not forgetting what it's telling us on a grand standpoint from the data aspect and not just focusing solely on the executional side of things, right? That is something that traders tend to misstep time and time again. They jump straight down. They're trying to find trades. Have to make sure that we start from the beginning. We're making sure that we're starting from a solid base and then moving accordingly. And so cryptos in and of itself, extremely volatile, extremely lucrative. Same thing with the indexes. We'll take a look at the precious metals here real quick as well, potentially see some type of plays and opportunities, see what else Excelsius can provide us. But definitely in times like these, this is where Excelsius takes things to a whole new level. Now, be mindful as well before we jump into the precious metal side of things. In the event you can't always be at the chart, you can't continue to keep looking for plays, you can't continue, for whatever the case may be, you can simply go ahead and add alerts all based on the types of plays that you are, looking to have. That's the really cool thing about Excelsius, is that ultimately you create a combination of alerts based on the goal of the trade and what you're looking for. In a situation like this, you might be saying to yourself, hey, I would really like to see price pull back a little bit before we do start to continue further up. What I would personally do is drop to the 15-minute time frame. I would start looking for some past points here. There we go. We do have some past points of market structure. And I would say to myself, okay, I'm going to set an alert here in which when price on the 15-minute time frame creates a lower low, which would be by successfully breaking this higher low, it's going to let me know. And now I know that that means that price is starting to pull back on the higher time frames as well. Of course, if I had set the lower low on the 1 hour time frame, we would have to be waiting until this point broke down, which of course, if that is your goal, if that is what you're looking for, then you would go ahead and set that alert accordingly. The alerts that you do set are time frame specific. And so you want to be mindful that when you do go ahead and set the alerts, that you are being mindful of the time frame in which you are working on. But the alert feature is an incredible feature because on top of the Discord that we do have available, which you can just set up the push notifications, you do have TradingView here, which you can simply set push notifications as well for any types of trades that you are looking for, whether that is on autopilot here telling you when potential opportunities are available all the time, or you're looking for specifics. You can really completely customize Excelsius based on what you need it for. It truly is the #1 trading algorithm in the world. And so in the event that you don't have time to watch the charts all the time, which quite frankly, no one does, this is where the alerts do come into play. You don't want to be missing on trades. That does result in a lack in P&L. This is where things come to a whole new level. And so S&P, cryptos, US 30, indexes, all in all, incredible opportunities here. Be mindful of the foundation and the base. Markets are still very much in a range-bound, indecisive environment. However, trading inside that range can still be incredibly lucrative. Use the data that Excelsius is providing you. And if you're not plugged into Excelsius already, go and get plugged in and go experience the advantage. Let's take a look at the precious metals market here real quick. We'll take a look at gold and silver. We'll see what's going on with them as well. They've also been moving quite aggressively, but still nothing too crazy going on within this. You can see the rejection zones are showing this to a T. We can see in this example here that ultimately price is been in a range-bound environment now for a significant time. We can see that there has been no real change within price for about a year plus now. However, we do get some short-term movements every now and then. And when you do get some short-term movements, these short-term types of plays, you want to see how you can continue to get involved in them. Once these choppy movements take place, they are not the most fun to be involved. However, just recently, specifically the last 2 trading days, we did receive some good volume from gold. We did see price move from about 1860, give or take, dropping down to the 1782. And for the record, Excelsius did call that to a T. Take a look at our TikTok or Instagram, and you will see that. But yeah, super unique to see Excelsius call that straight down and look at the respect that we are seeing within here. Let's talk about potential opportunities and ways that you can capitalize on it. Once again, first and foremost, being incredibly mindful of the environment, and that is range bound. Notice the way the rejection zones completely bend out, all based on the environment that we're in. Super bullish environments, you'll see they'll completely change in that way. In more of a range-bound environment, you see nothing's really changing, right? Price is still staying stagnant within the zone that it's been within. Maybe a little bit of depreciation or appreciation on the asset, depending on which way it's moving on a grander scale. But still, they completely adapt based on the dynamics of the market. It's absolutely wild. Goes back down into, once again, you're taking the tools that Excelsius is providing with a grain of salt. Breaking through key points and levels will ultimately allow for you to continue, but expectations are important, right? Be mindful of where you're continuing into what. And so with that, dropping down into the smaller timeframes, taking a look at what's been going down now for the last 2 days, we can see that markets have definitely been bearish, failing to really hold above that 1800 level. And we saw a fat rejection off of the 1840, 1850 handle. This rejection that we did receive here definitely happened in a couple of steps. First and foremost, we did create a short-term market structure here, which ultimately gave price the ability to give us a potential sell once we did successfully get below this main key point sitting around 1830. You could have taken the trade, targets the bottoms of the rejection zone, stops above the previous highs, and had a really nice 1-to-1 or so. Now taking a look at where price currently is, we do have potential plays that are available to us. Right now at this current time, we can see that Excelsius is telling us that we're pushing into a really good rejection zone point that is coinciding with some previous points of market structure within here, giving us indications of potential plays. But be mindful, and this is something massive on top of the other big key takeaway from today, which is how adaptable the rejection zones are. Market structure settings are very much in the same way as well. Notice at this current time how price is only marking up, notice how Excelsius is only marking up 2 main key points within here. It's not representing any of these other points, because if we drop back to the higher time frames in here, you can see that this whole entire movement has simply been an impulse. There is no structure within there. And so Excelsius, especially on the 4-hour, 8-hour intraday higher time frames, is not going to be marking any type of structure within here as well. Obviously, if you drop down to the smaller time frames, like the hour, the 30-minute, yeah, no question, you're going to get levels that do get marked up. But this speaks to, once again, not just solely focusing on, the variables that are telling you, hey, you know what, look for these trades, look for these opportunities, keep continuing to execute and fire away like a machine gun. But Excelsius is also protecting you from that risk standpoint, from that capital standpoint, because it's showing you from a higher time frame aspect, hey, if you're thinking about these ideas, great, but be mindful once again of these elements. There is no market structure here. We're only simply pushing into an area where we can expect some type of indications. We turn on the institutional volume. We ultimately can start to see, where price can start to decelerate and exhaust into. We can see that we're pushing into a major region within here. And that ultimately speaks to the deceleration, to the exhaustion, to the other key elements. The question becomes, hey, if we start to break through some of these points within here, which will be reflected on the smaller time frames with Excelsius, should I be expecting a movement all the way to this upside? Not according to Excelsius. Excelsius will tell you firsthand you're going to start moving into some key and sensitive regions near that 1810, 1820 region. And that makes sense, especially when thinking about the whole psychological aspect, the way trading works. You think traders, we broke back about the 1800 area. Where could we go through? But not being mindful in the end of the day, price on the daily in the longer time frame is still in a range bound market. And so aside from Excelsius just providing you an endless amount of opportunities, it's also protecting you from that risk standpoint because it's making you mindful of what the development of structure is. It's not just providing you any old key levels or any areas where you can expect deceleration and exhaustion, but very specific and selective based on the dynamics of the market and what you're working with. I can't stress enough the agility, the level of adaptability that comes with Excelsius is truly unparalleled to anything else out there. And when you already have an existing foundation, this takes things to a whole new level with such efficiency. And so when we're taking a look at gold right now, which is a way different environment than taking a look at the indexes of cryptos, still lucrative. Look at this volume. We want to see if, hey, can we get some of it on the other side? Are we really interested in any type of sells for the moment? When we take a look at Excelsius, absolutely not. We're at some serious key levels within here. If we start to break below, maybe, but definitely want some higher time frame breaks for that to happen. And still, not just because of the points and structure that we're sitting within, take a look at the institutional volume profile. You're at a serious area. Definitely going to be expecting some type of deceleration or exhaustion within this region. Drop down to the smaller time frames, you can definitely see that we're pushing now into first part of the rejection zone. And then even if you drop a little bit smaller, you'll start to see that some of this market structure is attempting to switch. The biggest thing in the end of the day here is listening to everything that Excelsius is trying to tell you and factoring it all into your already existing plan. That's what takes things to a whole new level. That's what's so exciting about Excelsius. And so when we're taking a look at something like gold, we can definitely expect some short-term corrections for the moment. But notice the key word that says short-term. In the event that we do start to break back down, these are not really something that you're interested in because you can see where the level of sensitivity are that we are sitting on the daily. Definitely want to get some type of higher time frame break here on that 1783 handle. Then you take a look to the left and you can see how much level of sensitivity sits within these regions. This is what Excelsius is here to do, provide you that data that you else would not have unless you're at an institution. You start getting the sell set up, you're going to be pushing back into a previous sensitive area. Yes, the rejection zone is there to tell you, but hello, look to the left. There you go. Look at that region that you're sent within. Look at that volume. Look at the orders. Look at what happened last time. And that's all Excelsius is there to do. Is there to make sure you're aware of everything and anything that can and will happen in the market. It is there to be your second pair of eyes and ears. And once again, hey, don't have time to watch the market all the time? Set your alerts and go on about your day. That is the beautiful thing about Excelsius. The level of applications, the level of utility is endless. It's all about what you need it for, when you need it for. Whether that's passing funded challenges, whether that's looking to build your portfolio, whether that's looking to increase the amount of trades that you are taking, whether that's to give you confidence in your existing trading, whether it's to do everything I mentioned and more, Excelsius is there to aid you with whatever you need, whenever you need. I cannot express that enough. And so, yeah, with gold, very similar to the indexes and cryptos, very similar. But once again, a much of a different structure because we're not just so biased in one direction. Cryptos and indexes have been moving straight up. You can't really say that about gold as much. It's been much more range bound. Let's take a look at silver real quick. A little bit more of a descending type of environment, but still nothing too crazy, right? Still very much range bound since about September, October 2020. Nothing too crazy within here. Excelsius rejection zone definitely telling us that we can expect a little bit, more pressure from the seller side, and we can definitely see that to be true. The buyers have very much been limited, have very been short in this way. And Excelsius is illustrating that to a T. Now we can see, just like gold, we did get some really nice volatility here over the last couple of trading days. And this gives us potential opportunity for some short-term pullbacks and for some continued longs. In this case here, silver looks like a way better trade setup than gold because it's still sitting somewhat in no man's land, which gives possibility for further continued bearish pressure into such sensitive regions. But at the same time, we want to utilize Excelsius's tools and see what else could be available to us. We can definitely see here, no question, when popping on the institutional volume profile, we're at a super heavily demanded region for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that price is going to just, pull out of here and just, make a massive correction to the upside. We did just recently break through some past points of market structure, also coming back below some previous points that were failing to break. So because of that, we're definitely very much going to see if price can expect to continue back down. We drop down to the smaller time frames here. We're definitely going to start seeing a lot of this ascending structure start breaking through. You have to admire just how incredible the rejection zones are in context of the way that they work. This is a really good example to show you that this aspect tend to push more into one of the second or third zones. The deeper the zone you push into, and the more support or resistance you can find, depending on which way you're moving. But it is absolutely beautiful to see, no question. Now, once again, it's about being mindful of what is going on. Notice in this example, you do get a bit more of structure in here in context to key levels, but still, it's not going to give you anything crazy because if you drop to the daily, it's one movement. It's just an impulse. And that will be reflected in Excelsius's analysis. You drop down to the smaller time frames and you will get more points available. But don't let that change your bias. Load up the market structure candles, drop into the 4, drop into the 8, drop into the daily. You're going to see market is mainly bearish and has been. Excelsius is there to make sure that not only are you being 100% aware of all the potential opportunities and possibilities at your fingertips, but also making sure that you're being extremely analytical about the decisions that you're making and making sure you're completely aware of the potential risks associated. Hey, you try to start taking some counter trend plays, no problem, but don't have these wild expectations. Excelsius's tools are going to be there. It's going to be populating sells. So if you're taking buys, be mindful you're against counter trend. Be mindful that the duration should not be for long. And as you start to move down in time frame, if you really want to try to say, hey, you know what, I'm interested in these buys, but I want to know when this might happen, or this might happen, or this might happen, no worries. You drop down into the hour, you drop down to the 30, the 15, you're going to start seeing more levels and a tighter rejection zone. That is really the whole dynamics of why Excelsius was built in the way that it is. Absolutely, absolutely incredible. And so in times like these, where we get these random acts of volatility, more times than not, you see traders on the sidelines. You see market participants on the sidelines just watching and not participating, not competing. And then they say to themselves, next time. But when next time comes, they're still doing the same thing. What Excelsius does is it provides you those additional plays. It provides you that additional confidence. It really takes your trading to new universes, new heights, genuine new levels. And don't take it from me. Take a look at the results. Take a look at the way that this back tests. And you'll be saying the same results as all our other clients do. Excelsius really is unparalleled to any other system that is out there. And that is why it's the #1 trading algorithm in the world. And so if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and fire away now. To get started, visit www.pinksand.co/Excelsius. You can get signed up there, get plugged in, and start experiencing the advantage. With that, that's going to conclude this weekly live demo. We'll see you all in the next live.